George Lucas explains his sequel trilogy and who ended up becoming the Chosen One. Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be exploring another conversation between George Lucas and Paul Duncan, author of the Star Wars archives. In this conversation, George details his inspirations for his treatment of the sequels and what direction he would have taken them, including who ends up becoming the Chosen One. When writing the movies, I tried to make sure that aliens and droids got killed, but not people. A lot of stormtroopers died. That's right, but you didn't know they were people. We did kill 3 humans, and that was unfortunate. I was always bothered by it. On the Death Star, when Han and Luke go into the prison with Chewie to rescue Leia, they shoot 3 Imperial guys. The guards drew their guns and fired first, but it's still a shame. Really? Yeah, we very consciously didn't kill very many humans in those movies. What about the stormtroopers? They look robotic, but they're not. How do you know what they are? Did you have a different idea of what they were? Yeah, they started out as clones. Once all the clones were killed, the Empire picked up recruits, like militia. They fought, but they weren't very good at what they did. That's why they kept missing. Then, after the Rebels won, there were no more stormtroopers in my version of the third trilogy. I had planned for the first trilogy to be about the father, the second trilogy to be about the son, and the third trilogy to be about the daughter and the grandchildren. Episodes 7, 8, and 9 would take ideas from what happened after the Iraq War. Okay, you fought the war, you killed everybody, now what are you going to do? Rebuilding afterwards is harder than starting a rebellion or fighting the war. When you win the war, and you disband the opposing army, what do? The stormtroopers would be like Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist fighters that joined ISIS and kept on fighting. The stormtroopers refuse to give up when the Republic win. They want to be stormtroopers forever. So they go to a far corner of the galaxy, start their own country and their own rebellion. There's a power vacuum, so gangsters, like the Hutts, are taking advantage of the situation, and there is chaos. The key person is Darth Maul, who had been resurrected in the Clone Wars cartoons. He brings all the gangs together. Was Darth Maul the main villain? Yeah, but he's very old, and we have 2 versions of him. One is with a set of cybernetic legs like a spider, and then later on he has metal legs and he was a little bit bigger, more of a superhero. We did all this in the animated series, he was in a bunch of episodes. Darth Maul trained a girl, Darth Talon, who was in the comic books as his apprentice. She was the new Darth Vader, and most of the action was with her. So these were the 2 main villains of the trilogy. Maul eventually becomes the godfather of crime in the universe because, as the Empire falls, he takes over. The movies are about how Leia, who else is going to be the leader, is trying to build the Republic. They still have the apparatus of the Republic, but they have to get it under control from the gangsters. That was the main story. It starts out a few years after Return of the Jedi, and we establish pretty quickly that there's this underworld. There are these offshoot stormtroopers who started their own planets, and that Luke is trying to restart the Jedi. He puts the word out, so out of 100,000 Jedi, maybe 50 or 100 are left. The Jedi have to grow again from scratch, so Luke has to find 2 and 3-year-olds and train them. It'll be 20 years before you have a new generation of Jedi. By the end of the trilogy, Luke would have rebuilt much of the Jedi, and we would have the renewal of the New Republic, with Leia, Senator Organa, becoming the Supreme Chancellor in charge of everything. So she ended up being the Chosen One. So many things to unpack here. I love reading these older interviews and seeing what does and doesn't reflect in current Star Wars. The first detail I noticed was George talking about how stormtroopers begun as clone troopers, then when all the clones were dead, the Empire recruited. The core of this was upheld, I think, with a few changes. In The Bad Batch, we see that the clones become the first generation of stormtroopers. However, the Empire doesn't wait for the clones to die. They destroy the cloning facilities on Kamino. Months after this, the Imperial Senate began a vote on the Imperial Defense Recruitment Bill. This was passed, and the number of clones being decommissioned by force began to rise. The concept of Darth Maul having an apprentice in George's sequels is fascinating, and I think it's something we're going to see a lot of in Maul Shadow Lord. Maul seems to have an apprentice who looks a lot like Darth Talon, the red and black Twi'lek. It's going to be an incredibly interesting relationship to dive into. Another change was George saying there was 100,000 Jedi, whereas in Rebels we have Kanan Jarrus telling us that there were 10,000 Jedi. The other really compelling one was Leia being the chosen one in the end. I believe you have to have some background knowledge on this one to draw a conclusion from it. I've watched my fair share of George Lucas interviews, and he has stated multiple times that Anakin fulfilled the prophecy of the Chosen One. I wonder if George bought into the Chosen One of different generations perhaps, and Leia was the Chosen One for the next generation. She doesn't quite fit the prophecy of the Jedi's Chosen One, as she did have a father, and the prophecy alludes to it being a male. However, I'm sure George would have justified it with an in-universe explanation had he chosen to do the sequels. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments below what differences you noticed in what George had planned, and how it is or isn't reflected today. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. The support lately on the videos has been amazing, so thank you so much for that, and until next time, may the Force be with you, always.